We are looking at chapter number 5, which is rulers and buildings. Rulers and buildings. So what is remaining means what remains after something happens. Building, statues, the things which were made at that time. So this is a figure of Qutub Minar. This is a five-story high building, you can say, or you can say a structure. So the band of inscription you see here under its first balcony. So the first floor was constructed by Qutbuddin Aibak and the rest by Iltutmish around 1229. And over the years it was damaged by lightning and earthquakes and repaired by then Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq and Ibrahim Lodi. So this figures or this structure tells many things about that time. So this figure shows first balcony of Qutub Minar. Qutbuddin Aibak had this constructed around 1199, and you just notice the pattern here created under the balcony by this small arc and geometrical designs. So these are in Arabic. You have to notice that the surface of the minar is curved and angular, right? So only the most skilled carved person could perform this kind of task with great precision. And just remember that very few buildings were made of stone or brick 800 years ago. Between the 18th and 8th century or centuries, kings and their officers built two kind of structures. So what were these two kind of structures? The first were the forts, palaces, garden residences and tombs. These are safe, protected, grandiose places of rest in this world and the next. Now, which were the second structures? So second structures were meant for public activity, including the temples, the mosque, tanks, the wells, the caravanserais and bazaars. So kings were expected to care for their subjects, and by making structure of their use and comfort, rulers hoped to win their praise. So construction activity was always carried out by others, including the merchants. So they built temples, mosques and wells. But domestic architectures, large mansions like the Havelis of merchants have survived only from the 18th century. So if we go and learn about the Agra Fort, if we look at the labor which was employed, so built by Akbar, the Agra Fort required 2,000 stone cutters, 2,000 cement and lime makers and 8,000 laborers. There is a word which is going to come, which is superstructure. So the part of a building above the ground floor is the superstructure. So monuments, we are talking about the engineering skills and the construction. So monuments provide insight into the technologies which were used for construction of the buildings. So we just take something like a roof, for example. So we can make this by placing wooden beams or a slab of stones across 4 walls, but the task becomes difficult, or it becomes difficult if you want to make a large room with an elaborate superstructure. So this requires more sophisticated skills. So between the 7th and 10th centuries, architects started adding more rooms, doors and windows to buildings. So roofs, doors and windows were still made by placing a horizontal beam across 2 vertical columns, a style of architecture called trabeate or corbelled. So this corbelled or trabeate we are talking about. And between the 8th and 13th centuries, this trabeate style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, tombs and the buildings attached to large step wells, which are called as baulis. Here is the figure. This is screen in the Quwwat al-Islam Mosque. This is in Delhi, late 12th century. Here this figure shows corbelled technique used in the construction of the screen. Then the construction of a temple in the early 8th century. So the Kandariya Mahadeva temple, dedicated to Shiva, was constructed in 999 by the king Dhanga Deva of the Chandela dynasty. So this figure 3b, here if you see, this is the plan of the temple, an ornamented gateway which is led to an entrance and the main hall that is called Mahamandapa, where dances were performed, and the image of the chief deity was kept in the main shrine, that is the Garbhagriha. This is the Garbhagriha. So this was the place of ritual worship where only the king, his immediate families and priests gathered. So the Khajuraho complex also contained royal temples where commoners were not allowed entry. So the temples were decorated with elaborately carved sculptures. So this is a figure of the Rajarajeshwara temple at Thanjavur. This has the tallest shikhara among the temples at its time. So constructing it was not very easy. There were no cranes in those days, and the 90-ton stone from the top of this shikhara was too heavy to lift manually. So the architects built an inclined path to the top of the temple, placed the boulders on rollers and rolled it all the way to the top. And the path started more than 4 kilometers away so that it would not be too steep. So this was dismantled after the temple was built, but the residents of the area remembered the experience of construction of the temple for a long time, and even now a village near the temple is called Charupallam, the village of the incline. So two technological and stylistic developments are noticeable from the 12th century. First is the weight of the superstructure above the doors and windows are sometimes carried by arcs, and this architecture form are called RQ8. So this second technological, or you can say stylistic version was the limestone cement was increasingly used in construction, and this was very high quality cement which when mixed with stone chips hardened into concrete, and this made construction of large structures easier and faster. So this is a figure, this is a true arc. The keystone at the center of the arc transferred the weight of the superstructure to this base of the arc. And here we have a picture. If you see this, this is a picture of true arc detailed from the Alai Darwaza. This Alai Darwaza, early 14th century, Quwat al-Islam Mosque, Delhi. And this is a figure, this is a painting from the Akbarnama showing the construction of water gate at the Agra Fort. Now, building temples, mosques and tanks. So temples and mosques are beautifully constructed because they were places of worship, faith. So they were also meant to demonstrate the power, wealth and devotion of the patron. And take the example of the Rajarajeshwara temple. An inscription mentions that it was built by a king Rajaraja Deva for the worship of his god. So Rajarajeshwaram, you have to notice how the names of the ruler and the god, they are similar. The king took the god's name because it was auspicious and he wanted to appear like a god. And through the ritual of worship in the temple, one god, like that is Rajarajadeva, honored another Rajarajeshwaram. So the largest temples were all constructed by kings. The other lesser deities in the temple were gods and goddesses of the allies and subordinates of the ruler. The temple was a miniature model of the world ruled by the king and his allies. So as they worshipped their deities together in the royal temples, it seemed as if they bought the just rule of the gods on the earth. So Muslim sultans and padshahs did not claim to be incarnations of God, but Persian court chroniclers, they described the sultan as the shadow of the god. An inscription in the Quwat al-Islam Mosque, it explained that God chose Alauddin as a king because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon, the great lawgivers of the past. So the greatest lawgivers and architect was God himself. He created the world out of chaos and introduced order and symmetry. So a royal architect, if we talk about the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, chronicler declared that the ruler was the architect of the workshop of empire and religion. So this is a plan of Jami Masjid built by Shah Jahan, his new capital at Shahjahanabad. This is just you can say zoomed version of this area. You see how does it look? And this is the direction of the Qibla, where in which direction the namaz is offered. So as each new dynasty came to power, kings wanted to emphasize their moral rights to the rulers. Constructing places of worship provided rulers with the chance to proclaim their close relationship with God, especially important in an age of rapid political change. Rulers also offered patronage to the learned and pious and tried to transform their capitals and cities into great cultural centers that brought fame to their rule and their realm. So this is the importance of water. The Persian terms abad, this populated, prosperous, and abadi, so flourishing, are both derived from the same word, which is ab. Ab means water. So it was widely believed that the rule of a just king would be an age of plenty when the heavens would not withhold rain. At the same time, making precious water available by constructing tanks and reservoirs was highly praised. So Sultan Iltutmish won universal respect for constructing a large reservoir just outside Delhi, Kohana. It was called Hauz the Sultani, or the King's Reservoir, right? So this is a picture of Harmandir Sahib, Golden Temple with the Holy Sarovar, that is tank in Amritsar. So why were temples destroyed? What happened? Because kings built temples to demonstrate their devotion to God and also their power and wealth. So it is not surprising that when they attacked one another kingdom, they often targeted these buildings, which were showing their power and wealth. So in the early 19th century, when the Pandyan king Srimara Srivallabha invaded Sri Lanka and then defeated the king Sena I, that is 831 to 851, the Buddhist monk and the chronicler Dhammakirti noted he removed all the valuables. So the statue of Buddha made entirely of gold in the jewel place, and the golden images in the various monasteries, all these he seized. So the blow to the pride of Sinhalese ruler had to be avenged, and the next Sinhalese ruler, Sena II, ordered his general to invade Madurai, the capital of Pandyas. The Buddhist chronicler noted that the expedition made a special effort to find and restore the gold statue of the Buddha. So similarly, in the early 18th century, when the Chola king Rajendra I built a Shiva temple in his capital, he filled it with prizes, statues seized from defeated rulers. An incomplete list which include that sun pedestal from the Chalukyas, Ganesha statue and several statues of Durga, Nandi statue from the eastern Chalukyas, image of Bhairava, a form of Shiva, and Bhairavi from the Kalingas of Orissa, and a Kali statue from the Palas of Bengal. So Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni was a contemporary of Rajendra I, and during his campaign in the continent, he also attacked the temples of defeated kings and looted their wealth and idols. Sultan Mahmud was not a very important ruler at that time, but by destroying temples, especially the one at Somnath, he tried to win credit as a great hero of Islam. So in the political culture of Middle Ages, most rulers displayed their political might and military success by attacking and looting the places of worship of defeated rulers. So this is, let's see, we are talking about the Mughal Chahar Baghs or Char Baghs. So this Chahar Baghs or Char Baghs in Humayun tomb, this is a terrace of Chahar Bagh at Shalimar Gardens and Kashmir, and this is the Chahar or four. Chahar means four, adapted as a riverfront garden at Lal Mahal Badi. Then gardens, tombs and forts under the Mughals, architecture became more complex. Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, especially Shah Jahan, they were personally interested in the literature, art and architecture. So in his autobiography, Babur actually described his interest in planning and laying out the formal gardens, placing within rectangular walled enclosures and divided into four quarters by artificial channels. So these gardens were called Charbags or Chaharbags, 4 gardens, because of their symmetrical division into quarters. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is a symmetrical partition. Beginning with Akbar, some of the most beautiful Charbags were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan in Kashmir, Agra and Delhi. So there were several important architectural innovations during Akbar's reign. For inspiration, Akbar architects turned to the tombs of their Central Asian ancestor, Taimur. The central towering dome and the tall gateway become important aspects of Mughal sculptures. So before we go ahead, this is the tomb of Humayun, constructed between 1562 and 1571, and this is the, see, this is the water and this is how it is being divided. More closer look, this is a 1590 painting of Babar Sir actually supervising. He's telling them, workers laying out a charbagh in Kabul. And you just see these intersecting channels on the path. It creates characteristic charbagh design. So, as we were discussing that these central towering dome and the tall gateway, that is Pishtak, became important aspects of Mughal architecture first visible in Humayun tomb. Now the tomb was placed in the center of huge formal charbagh and built in the tradition known as 8 paradise, or you can say hushed bihisht, a central hall surrounded by 8 rooms. So the buildings were constructed with red sandstone edged with white marble. This is a throne balcony in the Diwan-e-Am in Delhi, completed in 1648. So it was during Shah Jahan's reign that the different elements of Mughal architecture were fused together in a grand harmonious synthesis. So his reign witnessed a huge amount of construction actively, especially in Agra and Delhi. So the ceremonial halls of public and private audience, Diwan-e-Khas or Am, were carefully planned and placed within a large courtyard. These courts were also described as Chihil Sutun or 40 pillared halls. So Shah Jahan audience halls were specially constructed to resemble a mosque. The pedestal on which his throne was placed was frequently described as Qibla, the direction faced by Muslims at prayer. And since everybody faced the direction when court was in session, the idea of king as a representative of God on earth was suggested by these architectural features. So the connection between royal justice and the imperial court was emphasized by Shah Jahan in newly constructed court in the Red Fort at Delhi. Behind the emperor's throne were a series of pietra dura. What is pietra dura? Colored hard stone placed in depressions carved into marbles and sandstone, creating beautiful ornate patterns. So a series of pietra dura inlays that depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus playing the lute. So it was believed that Orpheus' music could calm ferocious beasts until they coexisted together peacefully. So the construction of Shah Jahan's audience hall aimed to communicate that the king's justice would treat the high and the low as equals, creating a world where all could live together in harmony. So in the early years of his reign, Shah Jahan's capital was at Agra, so a city where the nobility has constructed their homes on the banks of River Yamuna. These were set in the midst of formal gardens constructed in the Charbagh format. So the Charbagh garden also had a variation that historians describe the Riverfront Garden. So in this, the dwelling was not located in the middle of the Charbagh, but at its edge, close to the bank of the river. So Shah Jahan adapted the Riverfront Garden in the layout of Taj Mahal, the grandest architecture and accomplishment of his reign. So here, the white marble, mausoleum was placed on a terrace by the edge of river, and the garden was to its south. So this is the Taj Mahal, the great Taj Mahal at Agra, completed in 1643. So Shah Jahan, because before we go away or to the next page, let me show you this picture. So this is a reconstruction from a map of a riverfront garden city of Agra. You just have to note how the gardens, these are the gardens, palaces, the nobles are placed on both the banks of Yamuna. The Taj Mahal, this is on the left, and just compare this with the figure of Shahjahanabad. This is the area we are talking about. This is Yamuna River. So in 1850 map of this Shahjahanabad, and the city appears to be very crowded. But we'll answer this question: where is the emperor residence, etc. Now, Shah Jahan developed this architecture form as a means to control the access that nobles had to the river. So in the new city of Shahjahanabad that he constructed in Delhi, the imperial palace commanded the riverfront. Only specially favored nobles like the eldest son Dara Shikoh were given access to the river. All others had to construct their homes in the city away from the river Yamuna. Now, Region Empire, this is an interior of a temple of Govinda Deva in Vrindavan. So in 1590, the temple was constructed out of red sandstone. You just have to notice the 2 out of 4 intersecting arcs. See, these are the interesting intersecting arcs that made the high seating roof. And this style of architecture is from northeast Iran, that is Khorasan, and was used in Fatehpur Sikri. Now, region and empire, as construction activity increased between the 8th and 18th centuries, there was also considerable sharing of ideas across regions. The traditions of one region were adopted by another. In Vijayanagra, for example, the elephant stables of the rulers were strongly influenced by the style of architecture found in adjoining sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. So in Vrindavan, near Mathura, temples were constructed in architectural style that were very similar to the Mughal palaces in Fatehpur Sikri. So the creation of large empire that brought different regions under their rule helped in this cross-fertilization of the artistic forms and architectural styles. So Mughal rulers, they were particularly skilled in adapting the regional architectural styles in the construction of their own building. So in Bengal, for example, the local rulers had developed a roof that was designed to resemble a thatched hut. The Mughals liked this Bangla dome so much that they actually used it in their architecture. And the impact of other regions were also evident. In Akbar's capital at Fatehpur Sikri, many of the buildings show the influence of architecture styles of Gujarat and Malwa. Even though the authority of Mughal rulers waned in the 18th century, the architecture styles developed under their patronage were constantly used and adapted by the rulers whenever they tried to establish their own kingdoms. So this is an example of decorated pillars and struts holding the extension of roof in Jodhabai Palace at Fatehpur Sikri. So this follows the architecture tradition of the Gujarat region. Now, what was going elsewhere? See this church that touched the sky. So from the 12th century onwards, attempts began in France to build churches that were taller and lighter than other buildings. So this architectural style, known as Gothic, was distinguished by high pointed arcs, the use of stained glass often painted with scenes drawn from the Bible and flying buttress, tall spires and bell towers which were visible from a distance were added to the church. So one of the best known examples of this architectural style is the church of Notre Dame in Paris, as you see here, which was constructed through several decades in 12th and 13th centuries. So this is all about this discussion. Thank you so much and take care of yourself.